everyone, and welcome to this edition of the Word of Power. I am your host, Apostle Dr. Leanne Marino, here for this video blog. And today I'm answering the question, why are we not supposed to follow polygamy if it's found in the Bible? Now, we've noted that there are certain programs on certain channels on television that shall remain nameless that are now glorifying polygamy. Or maybe not so much glorifying polygamy as showcasing it. And showcasing the lifestyle and trying to prove to us all that it works when, if you really watch the show, it's not. We've seen people who've been catfished on the show because they were lonely and looking for other relationships. We've heard all their dramas, their divorces, their fights. We're watching them quarrel and argue and say that they're trying to make stuff work out. And the complete and total disorder that ensues when you've got 4 wives, 5 wives, however many wives they've got, and, 20, 30 children. Which, by standards, sounds almost absurd. It sounds like you're running a home for orphan children. But the reality is that polygamy creates a lot more than just multiple wives for one man. I've often said, I don't know why a man would want to be polygamous, because then instead of having one wife who thinks you're stupid, you've got 4 or 5. And that really is showcased on these different shows, that the fodder that the men have and that the women have against the men are very much ganging up on the man, and he is outnumbered for sure by all those different wives. But the question remains, one of the biggest arguments that people use in favor of being polygamous is the fact that it's found in the Bible. Well, the first thing I think that we need to look at and that we need to think about are the examples of polygamy in the Bible. And I can't think of too many that come out really looking good. Yes, they might have had a lot of children, and yes, it might have been something that was cultural, but think about the whole Jacob, Leah, Rachel triangle. That was just a mess from the get-go. That was like a soap opera. Sisters fighting over one guy their entire lives. Who's going to spend the night with who? Who's going to do this with who? My sister has more children than me. Jacob must have lost his mind. Not to mention, we know all the women did. And the fact remains that polygamy creates single mothers, even though we don't often like to think of it in those terms. If you've got all these wives in one man, the reality is that the women are going to wind up picking up the pieces where the one man cannot reasonably provide for all those different women and all those children. But let's look at a passage in the Bible that gives us some perspective on why polygamy is a part of the biblical record. And we're going to read 1 Kings chapter 11, starting in verse 1. King Solomon, however, loved many foreign women besides Pharaoh's daughter, Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Sidonians, and Hittites. They were from nations about which the Lord had told the Israelites, "You must not intermarry with them, because they will surely turn your hearts after their gods." Nevertheless, Solomon held fast to them in love. He had 700 wives of royal birth and 300 concubines, and his wives led him astray. Now, I don't think that we can fathom that reasonably. 700 wives and 300 concubines all living within the same quarters or within a certain distance of each other. They say that when women all get together like that, their cycles all synchronized. So can you imagine 1,000 women PMSing at once, or being in a bad mood or having a bad day? And then we've got all the children as a result from that are just there, that don't really have a father, because the reality is with 1,000 women, even if he rotates one night with each of them, that's 1,000 days before you see your husband again. We can see here very clearly, though, that these women had the effect on Solomon that the women on these different programs have on the man, and that is that they influenced him away from where he should have been. There were so many more of them than there were of the man that things were imbalanced and they were off. As a result, he was led astray against all sorts of things that related to the true God and into paganism and idolatry. Now, these women may not be leading them necessarily into quote-unquote idolatry, but it's the group concept. It's that there are more women than there are men, and they're ganging up, and they're more or less influencing or persuading the one man in certain directions that often in many ways become disrespectful. I believe that the Bible talks about polygamy for one very specific reason that can relate to us today, and it's that we can see it doesn't work. It creates an imbalance between the husband and the wife and the mutual submission that is supposed to exist in that relationship. It completely and totally distorts any concepts that we have of home life, of order, and of an anti-chaos theory, if you will, because what happens here, and as we can see with Solomon, is chaos ensued. And I cannot say I have seen a single example of polygamy in the Bible that really went well, or that really says, gee, this is a system that we want to emulate. But beyond that, the Bible talks about culture, and the Bible relates to us about culture. That's how we can know and understand that God is with us today, and that culture is something that changes. So as far as polygamy goes in terms of an expression, it's there because it reflects the real life of people in that time frame and in that era. But that doesn't mean that it's a spiritual principle or something that we should emulate today in our marriages. Believe me, men, one wife is enough at a time. Be good with that. You don't need to have multiple ones. You don't need to have concubines. You don't need to have more women around who think you don't do things right, or think that you're stupid, or think that you're a problem. And women, you don't need to be competing or fighting over a guy. It's bad enough we do that when we're single. There's absolutely no reason to be bringing other women into your marriage and then fighting for your husband's time and attention. And beyond that, if you're doing it because you want to have a lot of children, have a lot of children, adopt. But do not expect that you're going to do this with the goal of bringing other children into the mix and that that's going to somehow help the economy of your family. Because it's not. It's just going to make it so there aren't enough resources to go around, and then you're really going to look at your husband and think that he's stupid one day. I thank you for watching this program today. Do you have a question you'd like me to answer on air? If so, send it to me at questions@power4today.org. Also, be sure to visit www.power4today.org to learn more about Apostolic Fellowship International Ministries and the things that we're doing worldwide. Maybe you even want to be a part of it. Also, for those who are in the Raleigh, North Carolina area, be sure to visit www.welcomeinthisplace.org to learn more about Sanctuary International Fellowship Tabernacle, SIFT for short, and what we are doing right in your own neck of the woods. This is Apostle Dr. Leanne saying thank you for watching, and until next time, be blessed.